And DNA is, human DNA, is 9 billion years old, while Earth is only 5 billion years old.
Oh, I think Earth is older than that, though.
Scientists have entered one of the most debated mysteries in human history. Scientists ranked every race on Earth by DNA age. The oldest shocked everyone. Using powerful DNA analysis, they examined the genetic codes of populations across the world to understand how far back each human lineage truly goes. What they uncovered challenged long-held beliefs, as some groups showed surprisingly deep ancestral connections that reached much further into the past than expected. The findings quickly sparked shock, confusion, and heated discussion about human origin, identity, and history. As science continues to decode our genetic past, one powerful question remains. If all humans share one ancient beginning, what does DNA really reveal about who came first? Join us to find out what they discovered. Scientists finally compared humans' DNA ages. The world had spent centuries asking the wrong question. Many people wanted to know which race was first, which people were oldest, and which group stood closest to the beginning of human history. Some guessed Europe because of its written records. Others pointed to Asia because of its ancient kingdoms. Many simply repeated stories they had heard for years without ever checking the science. Then, modern researchers opened a new door. Instead of myths, opinions, or politics, they turned to DNA. What they found changed the conversation completely. The answer did not come from a palace, a battlefield, or an old library. It came from something carried quietly inside every person alive today. Hidden in blood, bone, saliva, and cells was a record older than any map. DNA had been storing pieces of the human story for thousands upon thousands of years. It did not care about pride, borders, skin color, or tradition. It only carried evidence. Scientists from different countries began studying this evidence carefully. They compared genetic patterns from populations across the world. They looked at tiny changes passed from parents to children over many generations. These small changes acted like footprints on a long road. By following them backward, researchers could estimate where branches of humanity separated and how people moved over time. At first, many viewers of this story may imagine a neat ranking list, with one group first and another group last. But science did not reveal a simple ladder. It revealed a tree. That difference matters. A ladder suggests some people are above others. A tree shows connection. Every branch grows from the same trunk. Every leaf belongs to the same living system. This was the first surprise. The second surprise was even bigger. The deepest roots of that human tree pointed to Africa. Multiple times, genetic studies showed that African populations carried the greatest diversity in human DNA. To a child, this can be understood in a simple way. Imagine a giant box of crayons with every color inside. If one place has the full box and another place has only some of those colors, the fuller box likely existed first. In genetics, more diversity often means a longer history, because there has been more time for differences to grow naturally. That is what researchers kept seeing. Many people outside the scientific world had expected another result. Old school books once pushed ideas that human progress began elsewhere. Popular movies often centered on other continents. Some even treated Africa as if it entered the story later. But DNA reversed that old picture. It showed Africa was not late to the story. Africa was the opening chapter. This did not mean only one area mattered, or that all African groups were the same. Africa is vast, rich, and incredibly diverse. It contains many peoples, languages, cultures, and histories. Scientists found that different African populations preserved different pieces of the ancient human journey. Some lineages appeared especially deep, meaning they separated early from other branches long ago. That detail stunned many observers because it destroyed another false idea, that human history could be explained with simple labels. It could not. Real history was layered, moving, and complex. Imagine a river splitting into many streams. Some streams divide early, others later. They travel in different directions, but they all began from the same water. Human ancestry worked in a similar way. Populations moved, mixed, separated, reunited, adapted, and moved again. There was never a frozen world where groups stood still forever. Another powerful insight came from migration. When some humans left Africa long ago and moved into other lands, they carried only part of the original genetic variety with them. This is normal when smaller groups move away from a larger population. Over time, those travelers built new societies across Asia, Europe, Oceania, and later the Americas. Their stories were remarkable, but their deeper roots still connected back to earlier African populations. So the true lesson was not about winners and losers. It was about beginnings and connections. Every person alive today, no matter where they live, carries echoes of that shared past. A child in Lagos, a farmer in India, a teacher in Brazil, a family in Norway, a student in Japan, all belong to branches of the same human tree. DNA did not divide humanity the way many feared. It united humanity in a way many never expected. Yet one mystery still pulled scientists deeper into the search. If Africa held the deepest roots, were all parts of Africa equally ancient in genetic history, or did certain communities preserve even older branches than others? That next discovery would stun the world even more, because it pointed researchers toward southern Africa, where some of the oldest surviving human lineages were waiting to tell their story. The oldest human lineages stunned the world. The search did not stop when scientists learned that Africa held the deepest roots of human history. In many ways, that discovery only opened a bigger mystery. Africa is not one small place. It is a huge continent with thousands of communities, languages, landscapes, and stories. If the oldest branches of humanity were found there, then another question rose quickly. Where inside Africa could the deepest surviving lineages still be seen today? Researchers pushed further. They compared more DNA samples, studied family markers passed through generations, and examined patterns that had remained hidden for ages. The more they looked, the more one region drew global attention. Their findings repeatedly pointed toward southern Africa. This was the moment many people never expected. Some populations in southern Africa, especially groups linked to Khoisan-speaking communities, were found to carry some of the most ancient known genetic lineages among living humans. In simple terms, certain branches of their family tree appear to have separated from other human branches very early in history. This did not mean these people were older as individuals or less modern than anyone else. It meant their ancestry preserved very old pathways in the human story. That difference is important. Too many headlines tried to turn science into a contest. They used dramatic words like oldest race, first people, or pure bloodlines. Those phrases were misleading. Scientists were not measuring value, beauty, intelligence, or importance. They were tracing lineage branches. The same way one might study the oldest roads in a city without claiming the roads are better than the new ones. Still, the results were powerful. Imagine a giant family tree stretching back farther than memory. Most branches twist, merge, and spread over time. Some branches split earlier than others. Southern African populations appeared to preserve some of those early splits. They became living links to an ancient chapter of humanity that might otherwise have been lost. For viewers around the world, this was shocking because many had never heard these communities discussed in mainstream history lessons. School books often focused on empires, wars, kings, explorers, and monuments. Yet here was another kind of history, written not in stone, but in cells. It suggested that some of the deepest human stories survived quietly in people whose names were often left out of global narratives. That revelation carried a deeper lesson. Fame and historical importance are not the same thing. A place can be ignored in textbooks and still hold priceless truth about the human journey. Southern Africa itself adds another layer to the story. Its landscapes include deserts, grasslands, coastlines, and changing climates. Human groups living there adapted across vast periods of time. They hunted, gathered, built knowledge systems, formed languages, and passed traditions through countless generations. Long before modern borders existed, these communities were shaping lives in ways outsiders rarely understood. Scientists also noticed something remarkable about language. Several Khoisan languages use click sounds that are rare in many other language families. While language and genetics are not the same thing, the richness of both reminded researchers that human diversity in this region was deep and valuable. Culture and ancestry together painted a picture of long continuity. But another myth needed to be broken. Some people wrongly assume ancient means primitive. That idea is false. Ancient lineages do not mean people are stuck in the past. Every living population today is modern. Everyone alive now has adapted, changed, learned, and evolved through the same passing centuries. A smartphone user in Cape Town, a banker in London, and a farmer in Kenya are all equally present-day humans. Old branches in DNA do not place anyone behind time. Instead, they show survival. Think of an old song passed through generations. The melody may be ancient, but the singer is living now. In the same way, ancient genetic lineages survive inside modern people living full contemporary lives. That is what made the findings so meaningful. The world also learned that human history is far more African-centered than many had been taught. Not only did early modern humans arise in Africa, but some of the oldest known living branches remained there. It was like discovering the opening pages of a lost book had been in plain sight all along. Yet science was still uncovering surprises. Researchers began to ask how these ancient branches lasted so long. What migrations happened around them? Which groups mixed, moved, or vanished? How did climate changes shape the map of ancestry over thousands of years? Those questions led to an even more dramatic truth. The human story was not a straight line from one group to another. It was a moving web of journeys, separations, reunions, and survival. And once viewers understood that, the old idea of ranking races started to collapse completely. It revealed something even stronger than who came first. It would show why the very concept of race itself does not match what DNA actually says. What race really means in DNA science. As the evidence grew stronger, something unexpected began to happen. The more scientists studied DNA, the weaker the old idea of race became. Many people had imagined race as a clear and fixed system, with sharp lines separating one group from another. They believed humanity could be divided into neat boxes that had always existed. But genetics told a very different story. DNA showed movement, blending, overlap, and shared roots. This surprised many viewers because race feels real in daily life. People can see skin tone, hair texture, facial features, and cultural differences. These traits often shape identity, family pride, and how society treats people. So it is understandable why many assumed race must also be a deep biological truth. Yet, when researchers examined the full human genome, they found that visible traits are only a tiny part of the larger picture. Most human DNA is shared across all populations. That means people who look different on the outside are still extremely similar on the inside. In fact, scientists found that genetic variation within the same population is often greater than people expect. Two individuals from one region can differ in many ways, while two people from different continents may share more similarities than stereotypes suggest. This changed everything. Imagine sorting books by cover color instead of by the words inside. Red covers on one shelf, blue covers on another, black covers somewhere else. It may look organized, but it tells you little about the stories in those books. That is similar to what happens when people treat race as a complete biological map. Outer features are visible, but they reveal only a small piece of human complexity. Skin color is a clear example. It is largely shaped by adaptation to sunlight over long periods. Populations living in stronger sun often evolved darker pigmentation that helps protect the body. Populations in lower sunlight areas often evolved lighter skin that helps with vitamin D production. These are responses to the environment, not signs of separate human kinds. Hair texture, eye shape, and body features also developed through adaptation, chance, and ancestry patterns across time. None of them create separate species or fixed human ranks. They are natural variations inside one shared family. Scientists also found that human groups have mixed repeatedly throughout history. People migrated, traded, married, formed communities, and moved again. Borders changed. Kingdoms rose and fell. Empires expanded. families crossed regions. Because of this, ancestry is often layered rather than pure. That word pure has caused great serious division in history. Many dangerous ideologies claimed certain groups were pure, superior, or untouched. Genetics strongly challenges those claims. Human populations have always been dynamic. Even communities that remained relatively isolated still share deep common ancestry with the rest of humanity. No major group exists outside the human story. This is why modern scientists often speak more carefully about ancestry, populations, and lineages instead of race when discussing genetics. These terms better reflect reality. They describe patterns of relatedness and history without pretending humans come in rigid boxes. For viewers, this can feel surprising at first. If race is socially powerful, how can it be biologically weak? The answer is that society and biology are not the same thing. A passport is real in society, but it does not exist in your cells. In the same way, racial categories can affect laws, identity, and life experience, yet still fail to capture the true complexity of genetics. That distinction matters deeply. It means we should not ignore people's lived experiences, but we also should not misuse science to justify prejudice. DNA does not support the old stories that some groups are naturally above others. Instead, it reveals constant connection. Another fresh insight came from how recent many human differences are. Humans as a species are young compared with many animals. Much of our global spread happened in the last tens of thousands of years, which is a short time in evolutionary terms. That means many visible differences developed relatively recently, after populations moved into new climates and environments. So while the world often focuses on what separates people, genetics keeps pointing back to what unites them. Every heartbeat, every laugh, every tear, every family bond is carried by a species that shares common roots. The same DNA code builds people in every nation, though with beautiful local variations written into the details. And yet, one puzzle remained. If race was a poor scientific ranking system, why did some populations still show stronger traces of ancient migrations, old mixing events, and hidden encounters with now extinct humans? That next chapter would lead scientists into one of the most thrilling discoveries of all. Modern humans did not walk through history alone. Modern humans did not walk through history alone. Just when many people thought the story of human origins was becoming clear, DNA opened another hidden door. Scientists discovered that modern humans were not the only humans alive in the distant past. Long before cities, nations, or writing existed, the world was shared by different human groups. And at certain moments, our ancestors met them. This was one of the most exciting turns in modern science. For years, many imagined human evolution as a straight path. One group disappears, then another replaces it, step by step, until modern humans arrive alone at the top. But genetics shattered that simple picture. The past looked less like a ladder and more like a crowded landscape filled with cousins. Among the most famous of these cousins were the Neanderthals. They lived across parts of Europe and Western Asia for hundreds of thousands of years. They were skilled survivors who made tools, hunted animals, cared for members of their groups, and adapted to cold climates. For a long time, people believed they vanished without leaving much behind. Then, DNA said otherwise. When scientists recovered genetic material from ancient bones and compared it with living people today, they found that many modern humans outside Africa carry small amounts of Neanderthal ancestry. This meant ancient meetings had taken place. Our ancestors and Neanderthals did not only cross paths, in some cases, they formed families. That discovery stunned the world because it turned extinct strangers into relatives. But the surprises were not over. Another mysterious group, now called Denisovans,
in 2010, there was the identification of a new lineage of humans, Denisovans.
A lot of this new evidence is really changing what we think about who we're related to in the human family tree.
Was identified through DNA from ancient remains found in Asia.
DNA started to come from these fragmentary fossils. It's gradually become clear that many of these so-called China archaics are probably Denisovans.
Very little was known about them at first, yet their genetic traces still survive in some modern populations today, especially in parts of Asia and Oceania. This showed that human history was richer than anyone expected. Imagine opening an old family photo album and discovering faces nobody in the family had ever spoken about. Then imagine learning those forgotten faces helped shape who you are today. That is how these discoveries felt to many scientists. They also changed how we understand migration. When modern humans moved out of Africa, they entered lands where other human groups already lived. Sometimes they competed, sometimes they replaced them, sometimes they mixed. The result was not one clean march across the planet, but a long and complex series of encounters. Even more fascinating, some inherited genes may have helped survival. Certain Neanderthal or Denisovan DNA variants appear linked to immune responses, altitude adaptation, and other traits in specific populations. In simple terms, ancient mixing may have passed on useful tools for living in new environments. That means the past still lives quietly inside the present. Yet an important truth must be clear. These ancestry traces are usually small portions of a person's total DNA. They do not divide people into separate classes. They simply reveal that human history included contact, exchange, and blending across different groups. Once again, the old idea of pure races began to collapse. If our species mixed with other human groups in the past, and modern populations mixed with one another across history, then humanity was never a set of sealed boxes. We were always connected by movement and relationships. This also restored dignity to groups once dismissed as primitive. Neanderthals and Denisovans were not cartoon cave figures. They were real humans with intelligence, adaptation, and culture of their own. They survived difficult worlds for long stretches of time. Their disappearance was not proof of inferiority. History is often shaped by climate shifts, population size, chance, and competition. For viewers, this chapter brings wonder. It means that inside many living people are tiny echoes of ancient meetings around forgotten fires, journeys across ice and grassland, and unions that no storyteller recorded. The human body became a museum carrying memories no one could see until science learned how to read them. Still, one final surprise remained. If humans mixed so often and moved so widely, how much of our identity truly comes from ancient DNA?
Your DNA is extracted from the saliva sample and analysed at 700,000 genetic markers, connections to living relatives, from the largest DNA consumer database in the world.
And how much comes from culture, language, and choices made in the present? That next answer may be the most powerful of all, because it shows what really shapes who we become today. What really shapes human identity? After learning that ancient DNA still lives inside many people, a bigger question naturally rises. If genes carry pieces of the past, do they decide who we are today? Many people assume the answer is yes. They believe DNA controls destiny, identity, talent, behavior, and even value. But the truth is far more interesting and far more human. Genes influence us, but they do not write our whole story. DNA can shape certain physical traits such as height potential, eye color, skin tone, hair texture, and some health risks. It can affect how bodies process food, respond to medicine, or handle certain environments. But genes do not arrive as a finished script that forces one life path. They are more like ingredients. What grows from those ingredients depends on many other forces. Environment matters, family matters, education matters, culture matters, opportunity matters, choices matter. Imagine two seeds from the same tree. One falls into rich soil with sunlight and water. Another lands on hard ground with little rain. Even with similar genetics, their growth can look very different. Humans are similar. DNA provides possibilities, but life conditions help decide what becomes real. This is why children with great potential can struggle in harmful environments, while others rise through support, learning, and resilience. It is also why no population can be judged by old stereotypes. Talent exists everywhere, but chances do not always exist everywhere. That insight is powerful. For centuries, some people tried to use biology to explain inequality. They claimed certain groups were naturally smarter, stronger, or more civilized. Modern science warns against such simplistic thinking. Human traits like intelligence, creativity, discipline, leadership, and kindness are shaped by many genes interacting with life experiences. They are not neatly sorted by race or continent. Even health shows this complexity. Some inherited conditions are more common in certain populations because of ancestry patterns, geography, or past isolation. Yet, lifestyle, healthcare access, stress, pollution, nutrition, and income can strongly shape outcomes too. Two people with similar risk genes may live very different health stories depending on the world around them. So DNA is important, but context is powerful. Culture adds another layer that genes cannot predict. Language, music, values, humor, beliefs, traditions, and skills are learned and shared socially. A child adopted into another culture can grow deeply shaped by that culture, regardless of ancestry. This reminds us that identity is more than biology. A surname can change, a language can be learned, a tradition can be passed on. A future can be built. That is something DNA alone cannot command. Scientists also study epigenetics, where life experiences can influence how certain genes are expressed. Stress, nutrition, and environment may affect how some biological systems behave. While this field is still developing, it adds to one clear message: genes and life constantly interact. We are not only what we inherited, we are also what we experience. This matters especially in a world obsessed with labels. Some people take ancestry tests and expect a complete answer to who they are. Those tests can reveal fascinating family connections and migration histories, but they cannot measure courage, loyalty, love, wisdom, or dreams. They cannot tell the full story of our home, our struggles, or the values we choose. A report may list percentages. It cannot measure character. That may be the freshest insight of all. Human beings often search backward for identity, yet much of identity is built forward. We honor our ancestors, but we also create something new each day through action. The child of migrants may become a doctor in a new country. A family once denied education may raise scholars. A person born into hardship may become generous and strong. None of these futures are locked inside DNA like a cage. Genes open doors. Life decides which ones are walked through. This does not make ancestry meaningless. Far from it. Knowing where people came from can bring pride, healing, and understanding. It can reconnect families separated by history. It can explain migrations, resilience, and survival. But ancestry should be a foundation, not a prison. As viewers begin to see this, another final truth comes into focus. If race cannot rank us, and genes cannot fully define us, then what is the strongest thread connecting all humans across time? The answer is not hidden in bones or blood alone. It is found in something every civilization has carried from the beginning: the shared human struggle to survive, love, build, and belong. The shared human story beyond DNA and race. When all the scientific findings are placed together, a much bigger picture begins to appear. DNA has helped us understand where humans came from, how populations moved across continents, and how ancient groups mixed and survived. It has shown that Africa holds the deepest roots of modern human ancestry, that migration shaped every population on Earth, and that ancient human relatives like Neanderthals and Denisovans left traces inside us. But after all of this knowledge, science arrives at a quiet but powerful conclusion that changes how we see each other. Human identity is far larger than biology alone. Across history, people often tried to separate humanity into strict categories. They built stories about superiority, difference, and distance. Yet, genetics keeps pulling those stories back into one direction. It keeps showing that beneath every visible difference, there is a shared foundation. Every human carries almost the same genetic blueprint. The small variations that exist are natural results of time, environment, and migration, not signs of separate origins. This means something very important. If we strip away language, culture, clothing, and geography, what remains is not division, but connection. A person born in one part of the world may look different from someone born elsewhere, but inside both bodies is the same ancient survival story. That story includes ancestors who faced harsh climates, crossed dangerous lands, adapted to new environments, and built families in unfamiliar places. No group is outside that journey. Every human today is part of it. Even more interesting is how culture continues that story in a different way. While DNA carries biological history, Culture carries emotional and social history. It teaches language, food, music, beliefs, and ways of living. It shapes how people see themselves and others. Yet culture is always changing. It moves faster than genes and travels across borders easily. This is why people from different backgrounds can share ideas, learn from one another, and build new communities together. In that sense, humanity is not only a biological family, but also a creative one. One of the most powerful lessons from modern genetics is that human separation is recent compared to human unity. All living humans share a relatively short evolutionary timeline since leaving Africa. That means most of what makes us human was formed long before modern nations, races, or borders ever existed. Those divisions are very new compared to the long shared history written in our DNA. This does not erase identity. It simply puts it into perspective. It reminds us that identity is layered. At one level, there is ancestry. At another, there is culture. At another, there is personal experience. And at the deepest level, there is shared humanity. When these layers are understood together, the idea of ranking people by race age loses all meaning. There is no oldest race in terms of human value. There are only ancient connections that stretch across all people alive today.
We can tell that all of these traits come from a common ancestor and aren't an example of convergent evolution.
Although the story of human DNA is not a story of ranking, it is a story of movement, survival, mixing, and shared origin. It is a reminder that every person is part of one long unfolding journey that began in the same place and continues into the future together. And that leaves viewers with a final thought that lingers beyond science. If all humans share one origin, one ancient beginning, and one connected genetic story, then the question is not who is older or younger. The real question is how we choose to treat the same human family we all belong to today. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.